The Galactic Assembly Hall stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal, its walls humming with the nervous energy of 1,000 different species. Ambassador Vexitari of the Hegemony watched through her compound eyes as delegates shuffled in their seats, chittered in hushed tones, or simply stood frozen in terror. Today would mark the end of the human problem once and for all. The humans had been a mistake from the beginning. When the first exploration vessels detected radio signals from the 3rd planet of a yellow star, the Galactic Council had celebrated. Another species to join their peaceful collective, another world to add to their vast network of civilized planets. They sent the usual welcome package: basic translation matrices, star charts, and an invitation to join galactic society. What came back defied all logic. The humans didn't just accept the invitation, they improved on it. Within a single rotation, they had reverse-engineered the translation technology and made it 3 times more efficient. Within 10 rotations, they were building ships that moved faster than established physics said was possible. Within 50 rotations, they had colonized 17 systems and were asking if the Council needed help with anything. Help? Vexitari clicked her mandibles in disgust. The humans always offered help. When the Zekari homeworld suffered a devastating earthquake, human relief ships arrived before the Council's emergency response team had even finished filing the proper paperwork. When pirates threatened the trade routes near Proxima Cluster, human patrol ships appeared and eliminated the threat with weapons that seemed to fire pure mathematics. When the Great Plague swept through the Outer Rim, human medical teams worked around the clock for months, refusing payment or even basic rest. The humans were efficient, innovative, and helpful to a degree that made the rest of the galaxy deeply uncomfortable. They approached every problem with the same disturbing enthusiasm. Whether it was designing new, faster-than-light engines or organizing charity drives for refugee camps, but it was their homeworld that truly revealed their nature. Earth, they called it, a nightmare sphere of crushing gravity, violent weather, and predators that hunted other predators for sport. The atmospheric readings alone should have killed any complex life. Storms that could level cities, temperature swings that ranged from freezing to boiling, and radiation levels that would sterilize most known species. Yet humans thrived there. They built cities that withstood earthquakes, developed technology that turned hurricanes into power sources, and created art inspired by their planet's constant attempts to murder them. The Council had quietly classified Earth as a Class 12 death world. Most species couldn't survive 5 minutes on its surface without environmental suits. Humans jogged there for fun. The delegation from Terra has arrived, announced the Assembly's central AI, its voice carrying the slight tremor that all artificial intelligences developed after prolonged contact with human technology. The great doors at the far end of the hall opened with a sound like thunder. The human delegation walked in with the casual confidence of people who had never met a problem they couldn't solve, or a challenge they wouldn't cheerfully accept. They wore simple dark suits that somehow managed to look both formal and practical, as if they expected to attend a diplomatic meeting and then immediately go build something useful. At the head of the group walked Ambassador Sarah Chen, the human representative who had somehow convinced the Council to grant humanity a full membership status in record time. She was smaller than most delegates, barely reaching the chest level of an average hegemony warrior, but she moved with the fluid grace of Earth's apex predators. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style, and she wore the kind of easy smile that humans seem to default to, as if the universe was fundamentally amusing rather than terrifying. Behind her came the rest of the human diplomatic team, each one carrying themselves with the same unsettling confidence. They nodded politely to other delegates, made small talk about the weather controls, and generally acted like they belonged in a galaxy that had spent the last 50 rotations trying to figure out how to contain them. "Honored delegates," Chen said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, despite requiring no amplification. Humans had apparently evolved on a planet where you needed to shout over the sound of constant natural disasters. "Thank you for gathering today. I understand there are some concerns about humanity's role in the galactic community." Vexitari rose from her position at the hegemony's speaking platform, her forearms spreading wide in the traditional gesture of authority. "Concerns is a mild way to describe it, Ambassador Chen. Your species has disrupted the careful balance that has maintained galactic peace for over 3,000 rotations. Chen tilted her head slightly, a gesture that somehow managed to convey both attention and mild amusement. Could you be more specific? We've tried very hard to follow all established protocols. A ripple of agitation passed through the assembled delegates. The humans always asked for specifics, as if they genuinely couldn't understand why the rest of the galaxy found them so disturbing. Your expansion rate exceeds all safety parameters, declared Chancellor Mordak of the Silicon Confederacy, his crystalline form resonating with harmonic disapproval. 57 new colonies in less than a standard century. Such growth suggests aggressive territorial ambitions. Actually, Chen replied, pulling out a small device that immediately began projecting holographic charts. Our expansion has been primarily focused on uninhabitable systems. We prefer planets that other species find too dangerous or resource-poor to bother with. We're quite happy to take the places nobody else wants. Uninhabitable systems, repeated Vextari, studying the projected data with growing unease. The humans had indeed focused their expansion on worlds that the Council had classified as unsuitable for colonization. Planets with acidic atmospheres, crushing gravity, extreme radiation, or ecosystems so hostile that survey teams needed military escorts. Why? Chen's smile widened slightly. They remind us of home. Besides, nobody else was using them. High Admiral Zekthul of the Combined Fleet leaned forward, his sensor array focusing on the human delegation with the intensity of a targeting system. Your technological advancement rate is equally concerning. Weapons, systems, shield technology, faster than light communications. Every year you develop something new that renders our existing capabilities obsolete. We've shared all our technological developments with the Council, Chen pointed out. Full technical specifications, manufacturing processes, even training programs for implementation. Everything's been made freely available through the standard diplomatic channels. That's part of the problem, snapped Vextari. Your rate of innovation makes it impossible for other species to maintain competitive parity. Economic projections suggest that human technology will dominate all major markets within 2 centuries. Chen looked genuinely puzzled. But we're not trying to dominate anything. We just like solving problems. If someone has a better solution, we're happy to learn from them. But the admission hung in the air like a challenge. The truth was that no one had been able to match human innovation, despite having access to all their research. Human solutions were elegant, efficient, and often based on principles that seemed to violate established scientific theory until you examined them closely enough to realize they were actually improvements on established scientific theory. Perhaps, said Prime Minister Yildar of the Peaceful Collective, her voice carrying the melodious tones of her species' natural empathy, we could discuss this matter more constructively. What exactly do you want from the galaxy, Ambassador Chen? Chen exchanged glances with her team, then looked back at the assembled delegates with the same easy confidence she'd maintained throughout the discussion. Honestly, we'd like to help. There are problems everywhere we look: inefficient trade routes, outdated infrastructure, energy shortages, food distribution issues. We have ideas for fixing most of them, and we're happy to share. Help, Vextari repeated, her voice dripping with the same disgust she'd felt earlier. Always help. You arrive uninvited. You solve problems we've learned to live with. You make our carefully balanced systems more efficient than they've ever been. And you call it help. Would you prefer we didn't? Chen asked, and for the first time her tone carried a hint of something other than friendly cooperation. The question sent a chill through the assembly. What would happen if humans stopped helping? Would the relief efforts cease? Would the improved shipping routes revert to their old inefficiencies? Would the dozen small conflicts that human mediation had resolved flare back into full-scale wars? The point, said Vextari, rallying her courage, is that humanity represents an existential threat to the established galactic order. Your species is too dynamic, too innovative, too willing to take risks that threaten stability. The Hegemony Council has therefore voted to present you with an ultimatum. Unquote. The center lies. The word ultimatum seemed to echo through the vast chamber, carrying with it the weight of a decision that had taken months to reach. Every major power block in the galaxy had agreed. Humanity needed to be contained, controlled, or if necessary, eliminated. Chen's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. She stood a little straighter, her hands clasped behind her back in a way that suggested she was preparing for something unpleasant but necessary. I'm listening. Humanity will agree to a moratorium on expansion beyond your current territories, Vextari announced. You will cease all technological development beyond approved parameters. You will submit to Council oversight of all military activities. And you will relocate your population to no more than 12 designated systems, with Earth itself placed under protective quarantine. The silence that followed was profound. Chen looked at her team again, then back at the assembly, and when she spoke, her voice was perfectly calm. And if we refuse, then the galaxy will have no choice but to treat humanity as a hostile force, declared High Admiral Zekthul, his weapon systems powering up with audible whines. The combined fleet is prepared to enforce this decision. All. Chen nodded slowly, as if she'd been expecting this moment all along. I see. How many ships are we talking about? The question caught Zekthul off guard. I fail to see why that information is relevant. Well, Chen said, her tone conversational. I'm trying to decide how to respond. See, we've been monitoring your fleet movements for the past several months. It's hard not to notice when someone's massing 40,000 ships in the outer systems. Quite impressive. Really, the logistics alone must have been a nightmare. The admission that humans had been tracking military movements sent another wave of unease through the assembly. How had they penetrated combined fleet security? How long had they known about the operation? You seem remarkably calm for someone facing overwhelming force, observed Chancellor Mordak. Chen's smile returned. But this time it carried something different. It was still friendly, still warm, but underneath it was something that made Vex's Tari's survival instincts start screaming warnings. That's because you're making the same mistake everyone makes about humans, Chen said. You think we're aggressive because we're innovative. You think we're dangerous because we're competent. You think we're a threat because we're helpful. She paused, looking around the assembly with the same easy confidence she'd maintained throughout the meeting. But you've missed the most important thing about humanity. Which is? Vex Tari asked, though part of her really didn't want to know. Chen's smile widened, and for just a moment, Vex Tari could see the predator that evolution had shaped on the nightmare world humans called home. We're from a death world, Chen said simply. Everything on our planet has spent 4 billion years trying to kill everything else on our planet. We didn't become apex predators by being the strongest or the fastest or the most armored. We became apex predators by being the most adaptable, the most persistent, and the most creative at solving the problem of staying alive. She gestured to the holographic display, which shifted to show a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared throughout the display, marking positions that made Vextari's blood run cold. You've spent months positioning your fleet to surround our colonies, Chen continued. It's a good strategy. Very thorough. Unfortunately, while you were doing that, we were doing what humans do best. Which is? High Admiral Zekthul demanded, though his sensor array was already focusing on the red dots with growing alarm. We adapted, Chen said, and her smile was now absolutely terrifying. Admiral, could you run a scan on your fleet positions? I think you'll find the tactical situation has changed somewhat. The display shifted again, showing real-time fleet positions throughout the galaxy. What it revealed defied all tactical logic. Every single combined fleet vessel was now flanked by ships that hadn't been there an hour ago. Human ships, appearing from nowhere, with no trace of faster-than-light signatures or energy buildups. Stealth technology? Whispered Chancellor Mordak. Better, Chen replied. We call it thinking ahead. Every human colony you've surrounded has been building ships for the past 6 months. Not in orbital shipyards where your scouts could see them. We built them on planetary surfaces, using manufacturing techniques we learned from watching your species try to mass-produce equipment for disaster relief. Turns out, when you really need something built fast and built quietly, it helps to have 4 billion years of evolution, teaching you how to hide from things that want to eat you. The Galactic Assembly had fallen into complete silence, the kind of quiet that preceded either surrender or violence. High Admiral Zek Thul's sensor array spun frantically as he processed the tactical data flowing across his command interfaces. Every ship in the combined fleet was reporting the same impossible situation. Human vessels had appeared beside them, as if materializing from thin air. Impossible, Zekthul muttered, his voice carrying the metallic distortion of a being whose vocal cords had been replaced with military-grade communication systems. Our sensors would have detected any approaching vessels. No ship can simply appear without generating faster-than-light signatures. Ambassador Chen tilted her head in that peculiarly human gesture of polite curiosity. You're absolutely right, Admiral. Ships can't appear without faster-than-light signatures, which is why none of our ships traveled faster than light to reach their current positions. The statement hung in the air like a riddle designed to make advanced military minds question their basic understanding of physics. Vextari found herself leaning forward despite her growing fear. Her compound eyes focusing on the human delegation, with the intensity of a predator trying to understand a new and potentially dangerous prey species. Explain, she demanded. Chen's smile remained perfectly pleasant, but her eyes held the patient expression of a teacher preparing to deliver a lesson that her students might not enjoy. It's actually quite simple once you understand how humans think about problems. You see, when we realized the galaxy might eventually decide we were a threat, we did what any species from a Deathworld would do. We prepared for the worst possible scenario. She gestured to her team, and one of them stepped forward, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair, and the kind of weathered features that suggested someone who had spent considerable time in dangerous places. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, our chief strategist for defensive operations. Elena, would you mind explaining Project Dandelion to our hosts? Dr. Vasquez nodded and activated a holographic projector that immediately filled the space above the assembly with a three-dimensional map of human space. The basic principle is simple. If you're worried about being surrounded, make sure you're already where your enemies think you aren't. The map zoomed in on a typical human colony world, showing the usual orbital installations, surface cities, and mining operations. Then, the view shifted, revealing something that made several delegates gasp in shock. Hidden beneath the planet's surface, concealed in caverns that seemed to have been carved directly into the planetary crust, were massive shipbuilding facilities. We've been building ships for 6 months, Vasquez continued, her voice carrying the calm precision of someone delivering a technical briefing. Not the big, impressive vessels that make for good propaganda footage, small, fast ships designed for exactly one purpose: getting into position without being detected. But the energy requirements, protested Chancellor Mordak, his crystalline form resonating with confused harmonics. Underground shipbuilding would require massive power generation. Our sensor networks would have detected the output. Chen laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both genuinely amused and deeply unsettling. Chancellor, you're thinking like someone from a civilized world. On Earth, we learned very early that the best way to hide energy consumption is to make it look like something else entirely. The holographic display shifted again, showing thermal imaging of human worlds from space. The energy signatures looked perfectly normal. Cities generating heat, industrial facilities consuming power, transport networks moving goods and people. Nothing that would suggest military buildup or unusual activity. Geothermal tapping, Vasquez explained. Every human world sits on top of a planetary core that's been heating up for billions of years. We simply redirected some of that energy into our manufacturing operations. From space, it looks like we're just being efficient with our planetary resources. Vextari felt her mandibles clicking together in agitation. You've been preparing for war while maintaining the pretense of peaceful cooperation. Not war, Chen corrected gently. Defense. There's an important difference. Though I understand why other species might not appreciate the distinction. You see, humans don't generally start wars. We're much too practical for that. Starting a war means committing resources to destruction instead of construction. And we find destruction wasteful. Then what do you call this? Demanded High Admiral Zek Thule, gesturing to the tactical display that showed his entire fleet effectively neutralized. This is what humans call making sure everyone understands the actual situation before anyone does something they'll regret, Chen replied. Admiral, could you please run a detailed scan on the nearest human vessel? I think you'll find the technical specifications enlightening. Zek Thule's sensor array focused on the closest human ship, a sleek vessel barely a quarter the size of his flagship. The scan results appeared on his personal display, and what he saw there made his combat systems automatically shift to maximum readiness. Energy output equivalent to a heavy cruiser, he reported, his voice tight with disbelief. Weapons systems showing. That can't be right. What can't be right? Asked Chen, with the tone of someone who already knew the answer. According to these readings, that ship is carrying enough firepower to destroy a planet. A collective intake of breath echoed through the assembly hall. Planet-killing weapons were forbidden under 17 different galactic treaties, specifically because no species had ever developed a need for that level of destructive capability. Not exactly, Chen said. It's carrying enough concentrated energy to drill through a planet's crust and tap directly into the core. We call it a planetary engineering tool. Technically, it's designed for terraforming operations, but we understand how the specifications might look concerning to species that haven't spent their evolutionary history learning to weaponize absolutely everything in their environment. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward again, her expression sympathetic but firm. The weapons aren't the important part, though. The holographic display shifted once more, this time showing energy flow patterns throughout human space. Instead of the typical network of fusion reactors and antimatter plants that powered most galactic civilizations, the human systems showed something entirely different. Each ship was connected to its home planet by invisible threads of energy that seemed to flow directly through subspace. Quantum entanglement, power transmission, Vasquez explained. Every ship we build maintains a quantum link with its construction facility. As long as the home planet exists, the ship has access to effectively unlimited energy. That's impossible, breathed Prime Minister Yildar. Quantum entanglement can't transmit energy across interstellar distances. You're right, Chen agreed cheerfully. It can't transmit energy, but it can transmit information about energy states. And if you understand quantum mechanics at the level humans have been forced to develop, remember, our planet spends most of its time trying to kill us with radiation. You can use that information to create some very interesting effects. The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just built a fleet. They had built a fleet powered by technology that made traditional concepts of supply lines and resource limitations irrelevant. Each ship was effectively backed by the entire industrial capacity of its home world. This is precisely what we feared, Vex Tari declared, her voice carrying the authority of someone speaking for the combined leadership of half the galaxy. Humanity has developed capabilities that threaten the fundamental balance of galactic civilization. You have proven that our concerns were justified. Chen nodded slowly, her expression growing more serious. I understand your position, Ambassador Vex Tari. Really, I do. From your perspective, humans appear to be an uncontrollable force that threatens everything you've worked to build. From our perspective, we're just trying to help solve problems and make friends in a galaxy that seems determined to see us as a threat. She paused, looking around the assembly with something that might have been sadness. The tragedy is that both perspectives are completely accurate. What do you mean? Asked Chancellor Mordak. I mean that humans are exactly as dangerous as you think we are, and exactly as helpful as we appear to be. And those two things aren't contradictory. Chen gestured to the tactical display, where human ships continued to hold position around the combined fleet. We build ships that can crack planets because our homeworld taught us that if you can't reshape your environment will reshape you. We develop unlimited energy systems because we learned that resource scarcity kills people, and we don't like watching people die. We prepare for military conflicts because 4 billion years of evolution taught us that the best way to survive a fight is to make sure it never becomes a fair fight. But we also share all our technology freely, provide aid to anyone who asks, and consistently try to find solutions that benefit everyone involved, because the same evolutionary pressure that made us dangerous also made us collaborative. On a death world, the species that survive are the ones that learn to work together against common threats. Dr. Vasquez activated another holographic display, this one showing a timeline of human activities since first contact. Relief efforts, technological sharing, diplomatic mediation, infrastructure development, dozens of projects that had improved life throughout the galaxy. Every single intervention we've made has been at the request of the Galactic Council or one of its member species, Vasquez pointed out. We've never initiated hostile action, never refused a reasonable request for assistance, and never used our capabilities to coerce other species into compliance with human interests. But you've also never been truly tested, Vex Tari countered. What happens when human interests conflict with galactic stability? What happens when your desire to help becomes a desire to control? Chen was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice carried something that made every delegate in the assembly suddenly remember that humans were predators. Ambassador Vextari, you're asking what happens when humans stop being nice. The words fell into silence that seemed to stretch across parsecs. Chen looked around the assembly, her gaze settling on each delegate in turn. And what they saw in her eyes was not anger or malice, but something far more terrifying. The cold calculation of someone who had spent her entire life learning to solve problems, and who had just been presented with a very complex problem indeed. The answer, Chen continued, is that you really don't want to find out, because humans from Deathworlds don't get angry when threatened. We get creative. High Admiral Zekthul's combat systems were now screaming warnings as more detailed scans revealed the true scope of human preparation. The ships surrounding his fleet weren't just armed with planet-cracking weapons. They were equipped with technology that his sensors couldn't even identify, powered by energy sources that defied conventional physics, and crewed by beings whose psychological profiles suggested they viewed impossible challenges as interesting puzzles to be solved. This is a threat, he declared. The combined fleet cannot allow. Admiral, Chen interrupted gently. I want you to run one more scan. Focus on your flagship's engine core. Zekthul's sensor array swiveled to examine his own ship's power plant, and what he found there made his combat instincts shift directly into full panic mode. Somehow, impossibly, there were human devices attached to his antimatter containment system, tiny objects no bigger than his clenched fist, integrated so seamlessly with his ship's systems that they appeared to have been part of the original construction. How? He whispered. Maintenance drones, Chen replied with the tone of someone explaining something obvious. You've been using human-designed manufacturing systems for the past 2 years, ever since we helped the Council upgrade their industrial capacity. Every drone that came through our factories included a few extra components, programmed to attach themselves to any military-grade antimatter system they encountered, and then go dormant until activated. You've sabotaged our entire fleet? We've made sure that if this conversation goes badly, nobody has to die unnecessarily, Chen corrected. Those devices aren't bombs. They're emergency shutdown systems. If activated, they'll safely vent your antimatter stores and leave your ships completely powerless, but entirely intact. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. The humans had not only anticipated the galactic response to their expansion, they had neutralized it months in advance, using technology that every species had willingly integrated into their own infrastructure. This is an act of war, Vex Tari declared, though her voice lacked conviction. Chen shook her head sadly. No, Ambassador. This is what happens when you threaten someone from a death world. We don't wait for the attack to come. We don't hope for the best. We prepare for the worst possible outcome, and then work backwards from there. She gestured to the displays around them, showing the tactical situation in perfect detail. Right now, you have 3 choices. You can order Admiral Zekthul to attack, in which case his entire fleet will be disabled, and you'll have learned nothing except that humans are exactly as dangerous as you feared. You can continue with your ultimatum, in which case humanity will politely decline, and you'll be faced with the same 3 choices again tomorrow. Or you can ask us what we actually want, and maybe we can find a solution that works for everyone. The silence stretched for what felt like centuries. Finally, Prime Minister Yildar spoke, her melodious voice carefully controlled. What do you want, Ambassador Chen? Chen smiled. And for the first time since the confrontation began, it was the same warm, friendly expression she'd worn when first entering the assembly. We want to help, she said simply. We want to solve problems, explore new frontiers, and make friends throughout the galaxy. We want to share our technology, learn from other species, and build something better than what any of us could create alone. She paused, her expression growing more serious. But we also want to make sure that nobody ever again makes the mistake of thinking that helpful means harmless. Because humans are both, and understanding the difference might be the most important lesson this galaxy ever learns. 3 months after what historians would later call the Deathworld revelation, the galaxy found itself in a state of profound recalibration. The combined fleet had returned to their home ports with their pride intact, but their assumptions about human nature fundamentally altered. The various species councils were engaged in intensive debates about how to coexist with beings who could simultaneously offer technological gifts and demonstrate the ability to neutralize entire battle fleets without firing a shot. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, humanity's newest diplomatic outpost, watching through reinforced transparent aluminum as ships from dozens of species docked with practiced efficiency. The station itself had been built in just 6 weeks using human construction techniques, but its design incorporated architectural elements from every major galactic civilization. It was meant to be a symbol of cooperation, though Chen suspected some species saw it as a demonstration of human manufacturing capabilities. Ambassador, came a voice behind her, and Chen turned to see Dr. Elena Vasquez approaching with a datapad in hand and the expression of someone bearing news that was either very good or very bad. Elena, please tell me the Hegemony Council has decided to be reasonable about the trade agreements. Better than that, Vasquez replied, though her tone suggested complications. They've agreed to all our proposals: full technology sharing, joint research initiatives, and establishment of human advisory positions in their infrastructure planning committees. Chen frowned. That's surprisingly generous. What's the catch? They want to visit Earth. The words hit Chen like a physical blow, though she was careful not to let her reaction show. In the 3 months since the confrontation at the Galactic Assembly, exactly 2 things had remained absolutely off-limits in all negotiations: Earth itself and the true scope of human military capabilities. Both were classified as state secrets of the highest order, though for very different reasons. All of them? Chen asked. The full hegemony leadership. 57 delegates representing every major power block in their federation. They want a formal state visit, with tours of human cities, meetings with our leadership, and what they're calling cultural exchange opportunities. Chen turned back to the viewport, watching a massive hegemony transport dock with the station's central hub. They want to see if we're as dangerous as they think we are. Actually, Vasquez said, consulting her datapad, according to their preliminary briefing documents, they want to see if we're as harmless as they hope we are. The distinction was important, though Chen wasn't sure it made the situation any less problematic. Earth was still classified as a Class 12 death world, for very good reasons. The idea of bringing 57 delegates from species that had evolved on peaceful, stable planets to a world where the weather could kill them, and the local wildlife considered sentient visitors a potentially interesting snack, was the kind of logistical nightmare that would give diplomatic security teams panic attacks. What does Home Office say? Secretary Martinez thinks it's a brilliant opportunity to demonstrate human hospitality and prove our peaceful intentions, Vasquez replied. Director Kim thinks it's a trap designed to gather intelligence on our actual capabilities. General Harrison thinks the entire hegemony leadership is suffering from some kind of collective mental breakdown and wants to know if we should be concerned about their decision-making processes. Chen laughed despite herself. So, the usual consensus from our leadership team. Pretty much. They're leaving the decision up to you. But they want an answer within 48 hours. The hegemony delegation is apparently prepared to depart immediately upon receiving confirmation. Chen was quiet for a long moment, running through the implications. A state visit to Earth would be unprecedented. No non-human delegation had ever set foot on humanity's homeworld, partly for their own safety, and partly because the government had decided early on that maintaining some mystery about human capabilities was diplomatically useful. But it would also be an opportunity to demonstrate something that might be more important than military strength or technological sophistication. Elena, what's the most dangerous thing about humans? From a galactic perspective. Vasquez considered the question seriously. Unpredictability. Probably. Other species can plan for human technological advancement or military capabilities, but they can't predict how we'll use those capabilities. We consistently make choices that don't follow established patterns of behavior for advanced civilizations. And what's the most reassuring thing about humans? That we keep our word once we give it. Every agreement we've made has been honored exactly as written, even when it cost us significant resources or strategic advantages. Thanks for watching. And we have bring them one. And the Neverdy 5. Chen nodded slowly. So the question is whether showing them Earth will make us seem more unpredictable or more trustworthy. There's a third option, Vasquez pointed out. It might make us seem more human. The observation was more profound than it first appeared. For 3 months, the galaxy had been struggling to categorize humanity. Were they aggressive expansionists, disguised as helpful neighbors? Were they naive idealists who happened to possess terrifying weapons? Were they calculating strategists, pretending to be friendly? The truth was simpler and more complex than any of those options, but it was also harder to explain in diplomatic briefings. Humans were exactly what they appeared to be. Problem solvers from a world that had presented them with very difficult problems. They were helpful because cooperation had been essential for survival. They were innovative because stagnation meant death. They were dangerous because anything that lived on Earth for 4 billion years learned to be dangerous. But they were also peaceful because war was just another problem to be solved, and humans preferred solutions that worked for everyone. Set up the visit, Chen decided. Full diplomatic protocols, complete transparency about safety requirements, and make sure they understand that Earth is genuinely dangerous for most galactic species. If they still want to come after we explain what they're walking into, then we'll show them exactly what humanity is. 2 weeks later, the hegemony delegation stood in the arrival bay of Luna Station, staring through the viewport at the blue-white marble that hung in the darkness ahead of them. To beings accustomed to the carefully controlled environments of civilized worlds, Earth looked both beautiful and terrifying. Massive storm systems swirled across its surface. Lightning flickered through cloud layers that seemed to span entire continents. And the Terminator line revealed cities that blazed with enough energy to power small moons. Class 12 Deathworld, murmured Vex Tari, her compound eyes tracking the storm patterns with the fascination of someone watching a controlled nuclear reaction. How does anything survive down there? Very carefully, replied Chen, who had arrived on Luna Station the previous day to personally oversee the visit. And with a lot of backup plans. The delegation had been provided with environmental suits designed specifically for their various physiologies. Each one equipped with enough life support to survive for 72 hours in Earth's atmosphere. The suits were also armed with emergency beacons, medical monitoring systems, and what the technical specifications politely described as rapid extraction capabilities. In case anything went seriously wrong. Ambassador Chen, said Chancellor Mordak, his crystalline form resonating with nervous harmonics. Perhaps we could begin with a brief overview of safety protocols. Chen smiled and activated a holographic display that,